Hey, middle-aged musician here. Oh man, I was trying to put out some content today, and I got sidetracked by fighting with technology. Recently had some people over, and there was kind of people commented that I sometimes seem to have a instrument museum, and I've had a number of things. I've had Weisenborn style guitars from the 30s and other stuff. I think at this point, my oldest instrument is from the 1880s. I inherited two of my maternal grandfather's violins. I'll be doing a video on them at some point, and I had them both restored by a better luthier than me. I got one of them restored, which is from the 20s. I actually have photos of him from 1931 playing it. But anyway, that's the oldest instrument I have. I do have some other ones that are pretty old. I just recently sold a fretless banjo that was probably first 10, 20 years of the, 20th century, 1910, 1920. That would have been the oldest, but let me walk through, I don't know, some of the things that I consider cool. I've had people ask me this. So here we have a Rickenbacker Silver Hawaiian, 1937. So the kind of first mass manufactured electric guitars were the Rickenbackers, the frying pans, came out in the 20s. This was the first next design, steel body, chromed. 1937 was the first year. They've got the one knob just for volume. I do have a video on this guitar. This one has a very early serial number. I don't know if you can see that. I think it's a 37 or something like that. I can't read that. 39, I think is what that says. But yeah, 1937. This, for all practical purposes, within the first few thousand electric guitars probably made. The first lap steel I owned, oddly enough, was from the 40s. It was a True Tone from the 40s. So this is 1930s. I will show you another interesting lap steel. This one is much lighter, amazingly lighter. This is a Recording King. The name is in use today. This one's 50s, maybe early 60s. Kind of interesting configuration. Not in tune. I haven't tuned it. I actually never tried to play this one. I was going to do some work on it and just haven't gotten around to it. But if we assume this is the 50s, then I've had one from the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. And then I've made the other ones I've had, other than I had a lap steel from the pedal steel from the 70s. But when we start talking about the early Rickenbackers, an interesting fact. This pickup keeps wanting to fall off. The tape used does not work well with this metal body National. This is a new National. Well, new-ish. It's, obviously not brand new. But sounds good. So the Doppieri brothers, well, let me back up a little bit more. Back in the day, I used to have a professor said anytime someone says back in the day, a whole bunch of BS is going to follow. But anyway, back in the day, you needed instruments to be loud enough for people to hear. There was no such thing as live sound amplification. So you need your instruments to be loud enough to be heard. Especially plucked instruments. Bowed instruments tend to be pretty loud, but plucked instruments didn't. Banjos wound up being a kind of go-to for a long time because they had that kind of projection, and that's why they put the resonator backs on it and all this other stuff. So the Dot-Bieri brothers came up with a solution with this built-in acoustic speaker that you have in these resonator guitars, and you get the Dobros from the Dot-Bieri brothers, National. There's this whole background on that it's almost as interesting as Puma and Adidas, without the Nazi stuff. But it was kind of interesting. But they wound up actually going, I'd say I think it was actually one brother, went to Rickenbacker and helped develop the early electric instruments, because it was the same problem. They're trying to get, instruments louder and louder and louder. And once Charlie Christian, and Charlie Christian pickup and the Gibson guitars and all that came out, they got, super popular. But somewhere in the middle of all of that, there was this Hawaiian craze that happened in the 20s. So at the same time they're trying to get these instruments to be louder and louder, there's this Hawaiian craze. So the early, you don't see it on this one, but a lot of the early Dobros and that have this, palm trees and other stuff, because this slide guitar technique and Weizenborn guitars and all those other things got real popular, and it was partially, from this, or, behind the scenes wanting things to get louder and louder. But then there's this new music style that comes in that dovetails with this unique sound. And so the, Dobros and that wound up being associated with Hawaiian music sound. So the early Rickenbackers were lap steels, like the one I just showed you, the silver Hawaiian, right? Before that was the frying pan, which was kind of the first one. Yeah, it's just interesting how history works. And at one point, I'd probably dredge up a picture. I know I have some pictures out there. I might be able to attach somewhere near the end of this. I had this Weizenborn style guitar from the 30s. It was like Guitar Teachers of Hawaii, Los Angeles, something about Los Angeles or California guitar teachers. But it was this, this whole like fad that was going around. But again, we have this, these different trends coming together. One was we're trying to get things louder and louder. We have these dance halls, and we've got this new trend with Hawaiian music. So these guitars wind up being associated with that. Here's the interesting thing. When there's kind of that hits, when electric music hits and we have kind of the jazz and the guitar is electrified, these aren't that interesting anymore. They're associated with this passe thing, like, like whatever, 1970s casseroles or something. And so these aren't worth much. So they get picked up by a whole other group of people. These were super expensive for a musician in the day. Now they're not worth anything. So the guys that pick them up are these blues guys down in the South. And so now this goes from being a Hawaiian instrument to being a blues instrument. Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting how things work out. But anyway, let's continue down this trek that I started. Here's an interesting segue. Let's just walk through a couple of these. This is a 1953 Gretsch Synchromatic Archtop. So archtops, they were another way of addressing that volume problem. So interesting thing about, say, an archtop versus a flat top guitar. Flat top guitar, the strings come through from the top, and so the top is always pulling up this way. An archtop is kind of like a bow and arrow. This is like the bow. So this is going to flex this way and that way. and it has a lot more power and projection. So this was, again, another way to try and get more volume. I'll show you one more. We'll go down a couple more routes here. So the Selmer Macaferi style gypsy jazz guitar. This one's probably not in tune. Actually not bad, but it's a little flat. So remember what I just told you about how the soundboard on a flat top guitar says the same thing. So this guitar is somewhere between just a flat top dreadnought and a arch top guitar. It's got a slightly arched top. It has this, this mustache bridge. It's set up very differently, actually. So the way the guitar is constructed is somewhere between like an arch top guitar, a Spanish style classical guitar, and a flat top guitar. This is the best of all three worlds. A lot of people say these sound dry. I like the way they sound. The only thing that's a little weird, if you're not used to it, is we'll just follow the dots, right? So 5, 7, 10, 12. So there's no 9th string dot, it's a 10th string dot. So depending how you've kind of learned your guitar, it might take some getting used to, but yeah, nice instrument. It's a lot of fun. So let's talk about, I need to thin the herd a little bit. Everything hits each other. Let's talk about the way some of these instruments sound. So let's grab these two. A couple of mandolins. We're going to start with the F-hole. And the reason I'm going to start with that is I was just holding up an arch top. And some of that's the wood, but some of it's just the way that F-holes tend to accentuate treble frequencies and not bass frequencies. And may or may not be able to tell, but I'm going to compare that with this oval hole. You'll hear a lot more of the bass frequencies, a little more rounded, rounder. So when they went with the arch tops, note those F holes, and then note the big giant D-shaped sound hole on that gypsy jazz guitar that I showed you, the Grand Bouche, so the mustache. So there were two styles of those, and so that was considered the rhythm guitar, the big oval hole. And you'll see some other ones that have like this tiny little oval hole in the middle, the petite bouche, and that has that punch and presence. So it makes a big difference on acoustic instruments. So this has kind of that, that same sort of bassy, all-round sound versus the F-hole with that, trebly sound. I think in today's world of amplified music, we lose a little bit of that. But let me show you one other thing here. That one goes here. That one goes here. I know you can't see me on camera, so I'm kind of talking through it. I have to move a couple of bows here. Yeah, not very impressive. I don't have the instrument from the 1880s, but let me show you just a tap test of some acoustic instruments. So violins are just like, they're just wound tight. How you get this much volume out of something this size? Yeah, it tells you something. But so this is a modern Eastman violin modern woods. It's a pretty well-made instrument, but we're just going to tap it, right? A German instrument from the 1920s. We're going to tap it. You hear how different that sounds? This is an instrument that was literally played for like 50 years. You know, like you look at that. I mean, you can look at the. You can probably tell. New, old, but it just even outside, you know, the wood itself. I mean, these are supposed to be similar tone woods, but you can just hear that difference. One just has more muted kind of thing going on, and it doesn't matter if you're, you know, have pickups and plugged in or not. You're going to hear that sort of difference, instrument to instrument. But anyway, I think we started off with talking about cool instruments, and so let's just continue the road. I'm not sure how long we've been going here at this point, but probably longer than your attention span would dictate. Yeah, that one there, that one there. Couple of Les Pauls, some of those may be interesting, but let's just go to some favorites. So I think I've hit most of that stuff. I think I already did a video on the Gretsch Corvette. I think I did a video on the Slingerland banjo, 1920s. Funny thing about this no truss rod, this thing never goes out of tune. I don't know. I mean, they're friction fit tuners in nylon gut strings, and I never have to tune this thing. I don't know what that's about. Someone needs to figure out how to sell that sauce. I did sell a fretless banjo. This one I have to do a little bit of work. I loaned it out, and I got some damage. Somewhere in the 1920s, Supertone, sold by Sears Roebuck. Ragtime King, number 508. Somewhere in the 1920s. It's a cool banjo. Actually, before it got some damage, it was my favorite banjo. I need to do a little bit of work to it. But, you know, even though it's a Sears Roebuck, you know, it's a cool instrument. I got some cool amps and stuff, but I don't know. I just thought I'd give you a tour of, you know, the museum. I've had people say, "Oh, can I get give me a walking tour of what you have?" I don't have anything, you know, sort of worth spending money to go see. I just can tell you stories about it. I probably spin you yarns about lots of stuff. I'll just take 5 more minutes and then you can go. I mean, you can obviously stop listening to this whenever you want, but this is an interesting guitar. This is Jackson. I actually traded, I never have gotten it fully together yet, but I traded a Jet City Univalve copy. I can't remember what they were called, for this guitar, and it was covered in silver stickers. So I took all the stickers off and I got the body kind of down to the basics, and then put a little stain and some finish on it, and a lace death bucker and aluminum bucker in it, some coil tap pickups in it. I put in a big giant, you know, brass block and claw in it, and that. You know, it's kind of a cool guitar. I did a couple of interesting just experiments with it, coming up with these. I don't know if you can see it. There's like these little aluminum inserts that the pickups screw into. I tried that. Just tried some different things, experimenting. It has this kind of look of almost like leather or something to it. So I like the way this guitar looks. But that was just, an experiment. Lots of stuff winds up being experiments. You learn stuff. You pick something up, you play around with it, and everything's got a story at the end of the day. Yeah. I don't know. I build these little things too. These little cigar box ukuleles and guitars. They're kind of cool. Just stuff to keep you busy. Keeps me off the streets. I'm 52. We're at the age where everybody's worried about what we're up to. So anyway, I hope this is entertaining. If it was, let me know. If it wasn't, you can let me know. Say, quit your rambling, old man. I just, thought I might go through some things and talk about them. I honestly could go on for hours talking about every single instrument I have has a story. And the ones I don't have, I could talk about that I've gotten rid of. Most of those have stories too. So that's the important thing, right? Your instrument has to have an attachment, and it has to have a story that's significant to you. So looks like I've gone on for quite some time, so I'll let you go. Chat with you next time. Thanks. Yeah, so here is a picture of my grandfather with the violin I was talking about that I showed you earlier. He's on the far left. Eugene is 1931. And some pictures of the old Weissenborn style instrument that I was referring to. It was Hawaiian Teachers of Hollywood is, I believe, the correct attribution there. It was interesting time. People latched onto that and made kind of cheaper commodity instruments. That's what this one was. It wasn't a great instrument. Definitely not like a real Weissenborn, but it was an interesting piece. I used to have it in this kind of display of old instruments. My grandparents retired. My paternal grandparents retired. They restored antiques, and so they would give me instruments and that. So I had this old, I don't know when it was, from 30s or 40s bugle from the Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts of America branded bugle, a drum from the 1920s or earlier, that had a hide head. It was all bird's eye maple. All the components were bird's eye maple, and the snare were these like leather cord kind of things. It's cool. I sold it a while ago. Let's see if I can dredge up a photo of that too. Put that in there. So yeah, some other photos to follow to just go along with some of the things I was talking about.